Welcome back to the Wrong Advice Podcast. I'm your host, John Pachuto. Happy St. Patrick's Day. Today is Wednesday, March 17th. And on today's episode, I want to kind of recap a couple of things that have gone on in the last week. First, touching on the Bachelor episode that aired on Monday, the finale, the After the Rose. Diving a little bit into a movie review that I just saw this week, which was Cherry with Tom Holland. And then finally touching on sports free agency, football free agency, and some of the Giants' moves over the last couple days. So first things first, I am a recent convert and avid viewer of The Bachelor and the Bachelorette franchise. Obviously, this year has been a bit of a shit show, just everything that's gone on with the pandemic. Matt James, who I'm a big fan of, being the first black Bachelor. There's been a lot of race issues at hand and like just a ton of drama over the course of the season. We had some girls self-remove themselves from the beginning of the year because of family stuff. It's just been a season unlike any other. And then obviously the finale, Matt chooses Rachel, and then all of the racial implications that came up with her past, with the Lady Antebellum parties in college, liking problematic stuff on Instagram and Facebook and whatnot. And all in all, I enjoyed the season. I thought Matt did a good job. I'm sure he had a lot more on his plate than he kind of let on. There was a ton of pressure on him being the first Bachelor. He definitely carried with himself a lot of unresolved issues with his parents' relationship and their breakup, and it was a little tough to watch at times. He seems like such a genuinely good dude and a person who's constantly trying to assess his position in, not just his life, but like the grand scheme of the franchise and his, newfound fame and whatnot. And he became a person who was like super easy to root for. You wanted him to find the person that he was supposed to, fall in love with and marry. And you could see throughout the course of the season that he was very consistently reiterating that's what he was there for. He was looking for his person. He was looking to settle down. He was looking to get engaged. And I think the disappointing thing is how towards the end of the season, how conflicted he was because of conversations that he had with his parents. And for all of his constant reiterations of what he was looking for and what he was ultimately going to hopefully find at the end of the show, he didn't end up having that success in the end. I think it's obviously super unfortunate when someone who has such problematic shit like Rachel had come up at the end like that, and certainly after the season had started, finished recording, and all those things came out while they were probably dating and or spending time together after the show. And I can't imagine that those were easy conversations to have. And also very sad because, you're rooting for Matt. You're thinking he found someone, and then obviously watching the season back, we all knew about all the problematic stuff that was going to come out. And it was just unfortunate. It seemed like Rachel really loved him, and obviously these are those instances where things you say and do in your past can come back to haunt you. And obviously there's a level of forgiveness that Matt gave to her, and she copped to a lot of this stuff and kind of just, reiterated that she made mistakes, and that's all well and good. It's just ultimately really unfortunate for the two of them as a couple. I think it'll be curious to see what happens with either of them moving forward. Like I said, Matt's a guy you root for. He seems like a super positive, good person that you want to see be successful and happy in his life. And Rachel is obviously super young, and she's made some mistakes. And my hope is that like she uses this as a really good learning opportunity. And grows from this. I recently recorded a podcast with a friend of mine from Ireland, and it's just sad where we seem to be as a country, really as a human race, in this day and age. Racism is worse than ever, and it just seems like we're reaching a boiling point and tipping point where push really needs to come to shove here. And it's just really alarming how fractious the population seems to be. And it's, without getting super into the race politics and everything that's going on in the world right now, I just gotta hope that there is some light at the end of the tunnel. And as far apart as we may seem today, hopefully sometime in the near future, we can start mending some fences and healing some wounds and come together. I, on Monday or Tuesday, watched the movie Cherry, starring Tom Holland and some actress I wasn't familiar with. And it was, I believe, written and directed by the Russo brothers, who did all of the Marvel movies. While I thought Tom Holland and the female actress, who's unfortunately slipping my mind right now, put some pretty stellar performances in play, the movie was just not very good. You can see what the Russo brothers were going for in the story that they were telling. You can understand what they thought they were making, perhaps at the time that they were making this movie. It's just 2+ hours of a lot of drama, and I don't think there was much conflict resolution. It was just you could kind of watch it and think about the movie that they were trying to make, but they were ultimately possibly incapable of making. There were some really stellar performances by a number of the people in the movie, but I don't think the story was there. I don't think the ebb and flow of the movie really suited the running time. And all in all, I would say 4 out of 10, maybe 5 out of 10, just based on, I thought Tom Holland was really exceptional in the role, although the overarching cohesiveness and or totality of the film just wasn't really great at all. I also watched Nomadland with Frances McDermott, who I believe just won a Golden Globe for her performance in the movie, and that to me is another good example of a film that an individual performance can probably end up carrying the film at large. I think the film might have won the Golden Globe for Best Picture, which it is a bit startling to me. The movie was too long, too slow, too dry, too drawn out, while McDermott was exceptional and a really, truly gritty performance. Nothing happens in the movie. I mean, it's one of those things that, it'll probably win Oscar for Best Picture, and hundreds of people will disagree with this, but there was no part about the movie that I found captivating. There was nothing about the story that I connected with. It just felt super dry. And another example of one of those films that they make to make you think about, this nomad generation of people who've lost their homes, their jobs, and they're living out of a van. And obviously that's fucking horrible. But just because you tackle a difficult subject, I don't necessarily think you have a good movie on your hands. And this is one of those examples. The cinematography was pretty beautiful. I will say they shot some beautiful shots. A lot of the pacing was good. But the movie, by and large, just didn't strike me as something that was good. Unfortunately, I had pretty high expectations going into it, especially after all that transpired with the Golden Globes. And like I said, Frances McDermott was very good in her role. I would pass another 4 or 5 out of 10. It's a bit too long. It felt repetitive at times. You're obviously drawn into the character based on Frances McDermott's performance, but that's pretty much where the movie stops. And lastly, for this episode, obviously it's going to be probably a bit on the shorter side. I want to discuss NFL free agency, start of the new league year, and as a Giants fan, my utter dismay and lack of really any confidence in what this regime is putting together. if you're unfamiliar, the Giants made a couple moves, starting off with signing a backup running back, Devontae Booker, to a 2-year, $6 million contract. Now, they haven't released the financials in terms of what is guaranteed in the deal and or what the totality is in terms of dollars up front and bonuses and the whole 9 yards. But it's difficult for me to look at what we currently have in the backfield, Wayne Gallman and or Devontae Freeman, at a fraction of that price and think that we needed to go out and sign a 29-year-old running back for a backup role and give him $3 million of cap charge for this season. Let alone the fact that Booker is receiving what amounts to a 3 or 4 times pay increase when he was the 3rd or 4th running back on the depth chart for the Raiders last year. It's these kind of off-the-wall, illogical signings that I think just really inhibits your ability to look at Dave Gettleman over the last 3 or 4 years and think he's been doing a good job as the general manager of the New York Giants. Additionally, we re-signed Leonard Williams, which I think was our number one priority after franchise tagging him. If you can give me any sort of indication or idea of what the necessity was, or the logic behind a 3-year contract for $60+ million, which has just dramatic cap implications over the next 3 seasons, why was he not signed to a 5-year contract? Why was that cap charge not pushed out long term? Likely this is a 2-year deal, and that 3rd year, whether he's cut or traded or whatever there will be a massive cap charge on the books for 3 years from now. Now, obviously, there's some television money that comes into play in the future, and the salary cap going up versus down like it did this year because of COVID. Still, it's just one of those additional head-scratching moves by a team that just doesn't make dollars and cents. That was an unintended pun. But in actuality, that contract should have been stretched out over a longer period of time. You're basically giving him the ability to walk and really just hurt ourselves from a cap perspective, and we already have a messy cap situation as is. It's just tragic to me that we're going to have a rookie quarterback contract that's going to end in a couple seasons, and our cap situation is just an utter mess. The only thing that we can hope for is that every game gets played in front of a crowd this year, and the salary cap goes up dramatically for the 2022 season. But Leonard Williams is a re-sign. Devontae Booker is an outside sign. We signed John Ross to a 1-year contract, the wide receiver from Cincinnati. I think he's got good potential, but there's nothing that they're doing today or potentially doing over the next couple days, to me, that looks like something that's going to improve this team. It's a tough day for a Giants fan when we're announcing the re-signing of our kicker, our long snapper, and our placeholder, and those are getting rave reviews, and all of our other major signings are sort of like, what are they thinking? It's really tough to be a Giant fan in this day, because it just doesn't seem like they have any idea of what they're doing in terms of filling out their roster. Now, we have a relatively high draft pick. I believe it's top 10. It might be 7. I don't know off the top of my head what pick it actually is. So obviously we should be able to get an impactful player at that position. But it's just more or less more of the same. You look at the moves that have been made over the last couple seasons, and you've got some really good signings like Blake Martinez, Bradbury, and then you just have to scratch your head at the James Stewart signings, the Devontae Booker signing. I mean, $3 million. The guy was making $800,000 last year. What did he do to warrant a 300% increase in salary? He had, I think, like 65 carries and 60 catches and like 600 total yards on the season. Why would we not have spent a little bit less money or just drafted a running back in the 3rd or 4th or 5th or 6th round? It just, the dollars and cents of it doesn't make sense. And when you look at where this team is and where we're going, there doesn't seem to be a cohesive plan. And you're staring at year 3 of Daniel Jones unless he makes miraculous strides in terms of his on-field play, unless we are able to secure a legitimate wide receiver threat either by the draft or by free agency. There's still some time left. We're looking at a year later and the team's not any better. We're not improved. We re-signed or restructured Nate Solder, which I think is obviously a good move. With a year off, he's got a good chance to be fresh. Letting Kevin Zeitler, cutting him, taking that dead money cap charge when he was arguably one of our better linemen last year doesn't make much sense to me. He got less money than we were paying him on his new contract, but we could have easily just restructured him and brought him back into the fold. So the offensive line seems to be in flux, which is what we spent the last 2 drafts addressing. We let Dalvin Tomlinson walk in free agency. There just doesn't seem to be a plan in place. And if there is one, obviously it's not up for them to explain it to us, but I would just like to have them write it down, put it in an envelope and say, on September 5th or whenever week 1 is, this is what we were aiming to do, and then see where it actually lined up with what was done. Because at the end of the day, there doesn't seem to be a cohesive plan in place, and it's an alarming position to be in. We're multiple years into a rebuild, and we're not entirely seeing any light at the end of the tunnel here. So to say that I'm alarmed and in terms of where the franchise is headed would be an understatement. When you look at teams like Dallas having all of their pieces in place for another year and a healthy Dak, it remains to be seen what Jalen Hurts is going to do in Philadelphia. I mean, the NFC East is still largely wide open. And at the end of the day, I don't necessarily think the moves that we've made this week or to date put us in any better of a position to be competitive. Listen, I stand to be corrected if Daniel Jones comes out next year, doesn't turn the ball over, looks like a new quarterback, looks like the answer that Gettleman thinks he is. So at the end of the day, I would love to be proven wrong. It just doesn't necessarily seem plausible or likely at this point. I think you're looking at another 8-8 season or worse. 8-8 might be best case scenario right now, even though they haven't released a schedule. I just am not looking at this team as something that could be overly competitive, and that's super frustrating. Listen, we get a healthy Saquon back this year. If the offensive line comes together in the offseason and training camp, sure, there are potentials for this team to be good. But that is likely just the fan in me wishing out loud that something like that transpires. So that's it for today's episode. I mean, I touched on a couple things that I wanted to discuss. I think the movies are a bit of a letdown. I thought The Bachelor was enjoyable. I'm curious to see what the next couple seasons look like without Chris Harrison on board, and with Katie and Michelle's season. They both seem like super awesome women. I really hope that they both have successful outcomes. It seems as of late that not a lot of these relationships are lasting, which obviously is not a huge surprise given what the show is about, but it does give people a little bit of hope for love. Want to end today's podcast with a super random recommendation, but I have recently started getting into the habit of using liquid IV hydration packages. This is not an ad, but please, by all means, if you guys want to sponsor me, I would love to get more of this stuff. It is rather pricey, but they're basically these electrolyte packages, like little slips of powder that you put in your water bottle. And not only do they taste pretty good, kind of like a lemon limey kind of Gatorade ish flavor. Every time I drink these, I feel really good. I feel more hydrated. I know that's a cheesy cliche thing to say, but I actually just feel good. It's a bit surprising, and I was shocked when I got them that I enjoyed them so much, and I felt so good after using them that every time I run out, I'm pissed that I got to wait 2 or 3 days from Amazon to get them delivered to me again. So Liquid IV hydration, highly recommend. They are a little bit pricey, but I think they're worth it, especially like if you're hungover or if you plan on drinking a night. Having one or two of those bad boys will probably make a real difference. So that's the end of episode 7. Short and sweet, just the way I like it. Next episode coming up should be the interview that I have with my friend Freya. She is a Irish girl, really awesome human being, someone I'm super happy to call a friend. So be on the lookout for that episode to drop hopefully sometime next week. And yeah, as always, please feel free to like this episode, subscribe to the podcast, leave a review. It really does make an impact. And be sure to follow along on my Twitter and Instagram @John Pachuto, and look forward to catching up with you guys on the next one. Take care.